The next panel is the future of pest controls and the quest for predator-free. And we've got some of New Zealand's leading innovative thinkers in here. Nikki Toki is going to be our chair. Robbie van Dam is at Goodnature, and that's the company that we put $500,000 in as a startup. And it's now so successful, it's exporting its technology all through Hawaii, Scandinavia. We're going to the first of our large-scale use of Goodnature. Tuhoi is well down the track of using their products in a large scale. And when you sit in the car with Robbie and you think of the future of pest management, and he's talking of inventing an aerial biodegradable stoke trap, you get really excited that New Zealand's got these sort of brains that are actually thinking completely beyond the square. Graham Elliot has largely been our architect for Battle for Our Birds, and when I first came in as DG, he was the one that pushed me most, along with the relationship with Minister Smith, to actually move DOC into landscape scale and stop doing 1080 research and actually use the stuff. And Graham has been the face of 1080 for DOC. It hasn't been pretty in the last year. I did have to phone the police commissioner as DOC staff get more into the front line of conservation, and we have our tyres slashed and our photos put on. It can get pretty tricky. Phil Bell you've met, and Kelvin Hastie has created this wonderful movement in Wellington, predator-free Wellington. Started off with predator-free Crofton Downs by just a simple mantra of 1 in 5 households taking a trap and keeping it set. So kia ora koutou, welcome to the panel.
Kia ora again, everybody. Thanks, Lou. You've done me out of a job, so that's handy. So I think it's really important that, having heard the great plethora of information we've had this morning about this predator-free vision, this crazy and ambitious goal, to bring some of the gentlemen, it seems, to the table to talk about what tools we're currently using and what tools are going to be there in the future is a really key time. So what I've asked my esteemed colleagues here to do in preparation for this is each of them will speak for 2 minutes. Where's my timekeeper? Annie's going to be my timekeeper. On their view of that, and then we will take questions from the audience, and they will ably assist in answering. Predator-free personally is a very pet project of mine. It's something I've been involved with, barely a newbie, only for the last 5 or 6 years, but something I have a great passion for, and something that I know our Minister also has a huge passion for and has set me an enormous work program to be a part of it, and it makes me really proud to be a part of it, proud to be part of the panel discussion today. So I'm going to pick on you, Phil. You've got 2 minutes. Tell us what you see the future of pest control tools in New Zealand is now, and why, between now and our ultimate goal of 2050.
Okay. So I think that the toolbox or the tool set we've got now won't go away. I think that, despite having given a 1080 talk, there is a whole heap of other tools that we're going to need as well. So, as we go bigger and bigger on this predator-free landscape approach, we're going to need to take on towns, we're going to need to take on farms, we're going to need to take on the bush, we're going to need to take on everywhere. And so all of those different places are going to need a different recipe. They're going to demand a different recipe because the people there will want different things. And so what we've got now isn't going to go away. There is definitely room to improve that tool set and keep building on it, and that is coming. What that looks like, I don't know. That's kind of why I'm still working, otherwise we'd be done. Yeah, that's kind of the easiest way to answer.
Since you're still well under time, I suspect, why don't you give us a couple of other examples about what Zip's up to?
In terms of other tools? Yeah, we're investing a huge amount into the remote reporting systems. so that we can strip out a whole heap of labour from some of the tools, particularly our kill trapping. We are working really hard on our detection problem, so trying to understand what does invasion look like. So right now we've actually got a family of baby rats running around inside our block on Mount Taranaki just to see what they get up to. So in terms of craziness, yes, we got rid of the rats, but then we put some back. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of got fingers in a whole heap of pies, to be perfectly honest, and most of the people in this room probably know that already.
Thank you, Graham.
Okay, when Nick said I only had 2 minutes, I wrote some notes to make me efficient, but then Lou accused me of not being pretty. Thanks, Lou. You probably didn't notice. Hey, well, I reckon using our existing methods and strategies for pest control, we can't yet produce a truly pest-free New Zealand. I think we all know that. We've neither the tools nor the social licence to do it. But with the expanded use and some refinement of the trapping and poisoning that we know how to do, we could make much of the country bloody near pest-free. But that leads to a bit of a dilemma, really. Do we use the limited resources we've got to invest in developing the new whiz-bang stuff that can deliver the truly pest-free New Zealand, or do we stick to our knitting and sort of use our existing tools on bigger and better scales? You look like you want to say something.
I do. Just hold the mic closer to you
Okay,
so we can hear your wonderful wisdom.
I'll lick it.
Thank you.
Now you've put me off my stride. So the trouble is with this dilemma means that if we focus on only the whiz-bang stuff, we might not be able to find and develop the new tools. So we run a huge risk of just complete failure. On the other hand, if we invest nothing in the whiz-bang stuff, well, then we miss this fantastic opportunity to have a really pest-free New Zealand. So, of course, I'm a scientist and I'm a boring old dinosaur, so I reckon we should have a carefully thought-out and well-balanced compromise between these two strategies. I reckon we should spend most of our resources expanding and refining the use of traps and poisons, and then we should spend something, quite a bit probably, but not as much, on chasing new predator-free technologies. So this is what I reckon it'll look like between now and 2050. We'll expand and refine our use of traps and bait stations on the developed and accessible parts of New Zealand, and in the remote backcountry, we'll use a combination of aerially applied 1080 and aerially applied PAP to reduce rat stoats and possums to very low level. We'll also work hard to convince the public that we're on the right track, and if that works, we'll eventually have enough money and the public approval to do the whole country. And if we do the whole country with our existing tools, our birds, lizards and invertebrates will flourish and we'll be pretty pleased with ourselves. Then if the whiz-bang stuff comes through, we'll be able to nail the possums and stoats. I don't reckon we'll ever do cats and rats, but I'm a boring old fart. But in any case, we'll be in heaven with just those ones gone. And then if the whiz-bang stuff doesn't deliver, well, the situation will still be pretty damn good.
I'm going to sit on the fence like, I agree with you, Graham, but I'm going to sit on the fence like Phil. And I'm going to say that, we've got a bunch of stuff that is pretty great, but the focus for Goodnature really is developing a sustainable business and a sustainable mechanism by investing in education, investing in smart minds, and taking them all under our wing and uniting them in our ambition towards this 2050 goal. So what do we do there? We currently, I just had a quick reflection on where obviously the conversation here is really directed toward conservation estate, and we believe that it's actually the other 70% that is truly critical to getting hearts and minds into the 30% that we currently do our best on. So with really engaging with tools that are highly socially acceptable, they may not have the, they are sometimes higher in the cost, but they're far more socially acceptable. I believe that you win the hearts and minds through that and remind people of the thing that we actually, it's not that far from the surface for most of us, that we're inherently committed to our endangered species and our environment. In terms of, I was just thinking about the conservation estate and how business, this type of business, supports conservation. And in terms of our global sales, we're paying a tax bill that's greater than our current uptake on the conservation estate. So in essence, it's kind of free. So we believe that's one mechanism that we can utilise to actually grow the scale of pest control in New Zealand. That's actually making everyone else's biodiversity better. So.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good. I'd just like to say that I really should have got Phil's 2 minutes because he just spoke a few minutes ago. And I'm Kelvin. I'm the community guy. So that's why I've been rolled out on this panel here. I'd just like to say, imagine you're at home with a glass of wine or a beer in your living room, because when it comes to the future of pest control, when you ask the community guy that sort of question, the answer could be anything. So here we go. I had to think hard about the question, and I wanted to quote someone very important. And this person said, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. And do you know who said this? Can anybody tell me? It was Marty McFly from Back to the Future. You see, Marty McFly and Doc Brown, remember the Doc and the DeLorean? Anyone remember that movie? Yeah, cool. They went back into the past because they messed up the future. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought it might be. And that's what we did at Crofton Downs Predator-Free Community. We looked at the past and realised we had used every conceivable method of extermination to push our Indigenous species to the brink. At Crofton Downs, we brought this back to the future. We applied these methods to some of our introduced mammals. We used many hands. Now we have 20 groups across Wellington and 6 in Porirua utilising this methodology. In Crofton Downs, 1 in 5 people are taking part. In Plympton, 1 in 4 are taking part. In Parramatta Golden Gate, 1 in 3 are taking part. If we apply this to Wellington City, it will involve 150,000 active participants. We empowered the community. They took ownership, and the future of Predator Free 2050 is in partnership with this, with the community and the other solutions being discussed here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And while you're all cogitating on questions from the floor, I'll start you off by saying that a huge part of the process here is the purpose of what we're doing is actually fighting extinction, right? It's actually halting the decline of our threatened species. So when you and your various guises are engaged in your tools for predator control, what are the bits that you look to show that you're ticking the fighting extinction boxes along the way? Kelvin.
Okay, so in a lot of our communities there are no birds left, and there might be not a lot of lizards left. So look, we have to find unique and interesting ways to engage people. So every community is different. Certainly we used It's All About the Killing, and we sort of kept away from endangered species in our community. But, that's the outcome from our trapping. We all know we get more lizards, we get more birds, and that's why we're doing it.
Well, there's a bunch of measures that we have in place, obviously, to illustrate that, that we can grow species. I think more focus needs to be on the scale of the type of protection we apply. So bang for buck isn't always better, and I think we've started to believe that. And in actual fact, really well targeted, intensive pest control can actually support those guys that are just on the edge. And I think globally we see the same thing happening in every country. And so our focus is really on those ones that. Often we develop very New Zealand-centric methods, and in fact, everybody, when you look at, the fact that you are using an IUCN metric, but we don't necessarily develop tools to support any of the other species that are on that list, that's where we're really passionate as well. So we believe that actually the knowledge that we've grown here is critically valuable to the global species decline that we see, and we think actually that our metrics here are pretty good, but we need to look further afield as well. Those things actually inform us of some of the things that we can bring back here, a bit more biodiverse in our tools.
Thank you. Graham, you can have a quick answer and then I'll throw it to the floor.
Okay, well, in the projects I'm involved with, we do a hell of a lot of counting of birds, and we come up with some really boring and unreadable statistics about it. But from those, we can make some really good stories. And I think about the story we've got around the Mōhua, which in some of our valleys, where we've done intensive predator control using almost all the tools that exist, we've got really good stories about Mōhua recovery. And we've got the same stories for other species like kaka and kiwi and whio, all sorts of other things. Thank
you. Phil, you're off the hook. Audience, who has a question for our panel of experts here relating to tools for the future for predator-free? Jesse's looking through the lights. Eric.
I have a question for Robbie. You talked about socially acceptable techniques and tools, and just your opinion on what you're defining as such techniques at the moment. And as we all know, attitudes do change over time. Into 2050 is quite a long time of how you see what might be up in the future as being socially acceptable.
Okay, I can. So the tools that we're currently using, we currently use those to a great capacity. I believe that we can do a lot of the work that Graham's doing, but doing it non-toxically, so that in the scale that Graham operates with non-toxic methods. And when we're looking at the way consumer products are developed, and you look at every other industry, there's a huge focus on the way that we treat the planet. We, at Goodnature, we focus on non-toxic things because we know not necessarily that non-toxic methods are better, it's simply that we immediately get on with it, right? So we can, the way that we operate is that we can look at 30 years of pushback, or 30 years of trying social conditioning, or 30 years of these discussions that actually we can provide really good solutions, and in fact the same as what we currently have with these methods. You know, if you think 30 years ago, we were using 16 to 20 kilos of 1080 per hectare. So we've refined that method so much, remarkably well. You know, the brains of these guys is outrageous in the sense that, you know, we've had the number one driver is effectiveness. Number one driver is reducing waste, revisiting places, and growing species. And we believe that our role is really just to jump on top of that and go, you got it to there, let's do it in ways that we can immediately do. So how do we do on people's back doorsteps? How do we do the 70% now with the methods that we invented on the conservation estate without the pushback, without the argument, really? We're just really looking for 30 years of positive engagement with communities, with iwi, with the public, and we know that that's through things that we immediately can see are not abrasive.
Yes.
Well, my question follows on quite well from the last one, I think, but it's directed more at Phil. And I'll say straight up, I have no problem with using 1080 if that's what it takes to get the job done, so be it, great. But I did want to ask if, in your experiment on Taranaki, whether you did take the opportunity to look at non-target effects, because that seems to be where a lot of the criticism comes from. So this is the social license to operate, I guess. It could have been an opportunity to have a really good look at what non-target effects were occurring, or do you feel this has been reasonably well covered already with research in the past?
So the answer to your question is yes. We did look at non-target effects. So under any DOC permission to use toxin on the estate, to use any tool on the estate, you need to go through an environmental assessment. And so that includes your non-target risk and then also what you're going to do about it. I'll be honest, in both the DOC block and the ZIP block, we found a dead blackbird and a dead chaffinch. We walked 45k of track in each of those blocks continuously for 7 weeks, and that's what we found. So yeah, we did do that. I don't think that a single snapshot of a single trial is the entire answer to the non-target question relating to that technique, but there is a massive body of evidence for that already. And so, yeah, that's probably as much as needs to be said, I guess.
Graham, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, in a whole lot of 1080 operations that the department and Osprey are running, there's non-target monitoring going on of a heap of different species, Ikea, Kaka, rock-wren, moorhor, rifleman, robin, weka. So there's a big program of non-target monitoring that's both looking at costs through by-kill and benefits through increased reproduction success.
Thank you. Jessie.
So I'd like to know from some of you, whoever, how much effort we're putting in or how much effort we should be putting in for tools for non-expert users. So your community groups, your backyard trappers, not people that need to go to a 3-day course in order to get approved to use certain tools.
Did you guys catch that? Jessie, can you just repeat? That's really hard to hear up here. Can you just repeat the end of your question? So I took it that you were saying, how much do you need to take from the views from community about what they want to do? Yes?
No, how much effort into tool development for non-expert users such as community groups or backyard trappers. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So are you asking how much effort's going in to make the things that we're making easy for everyone else to use? Yeah, so for us, we're firstly, we're trying to prove the model works. So given that no one's, as far as we can ascertain, no one's done it at the scale in which we're trying to do across all of the fronts we're attacking, the key for us is prove it works, and then the ultimate aim is actually that we're not the delivery arm, so there will be a delivery arm that will take those tools and roll them out to wherever they need to be rolled out. So at that point, that handover has to be seamless. So if that place happens to be a place that a community is going to pick it up, then those tools need to be able to be used by the community. Now, I'm not saying the community aren't skilled people, so it may well be that the community involved may want it to be super high-tech and complicated, but if the community involved or the organisation involved doesn't want that, then there is a whole nother step in the productionising of whatever it is that we make that needs to be in tune with whoever's going to use it whenever they're going to use it. But for us, that's kind of down the line. We've got to make sure the thing works for us first so that we can actually have a model and a product to hand on.
I'm going to jump in because, Jessie, the Department of Conservation is working quite hard, furiously, behind the scenes on delivering a toolkit to communities with input from Predator Free New Zealand Trust and others that will essentially be a go-to site, and it marries up entirely with the Predator Free ranges that were mentioned earlier today. So what there will be is a network of people throughout the country who are go-to points for anyone in the community who wants to engage, who will link them with the help of Predator Free New Zealand Trust to the right information about the pests they may have, the tools that are available, how they can find where to get those tools, and how they can use them efficiently with best practice and then monitor them. So that is one of our big priorities at the moment, and we will evolve that over the time, and we'll have to work really fast to keep up with pretty much everyone on this panel to make sure that we're always at the cutting edge of best practice. Robbie.
Obviously, we're really focused on getting from kids at school through to one of our biggest labour forces, obviously, retirees. But the predator-free community thing, of course, there are two ways. We would like that we start looking at really efficient systems rather than simply giving somebody, we can do 1 million hectares, of course, if we just give out 1 million traps, but commit ourselves to 12 million checks for the next ever, right? we would prefer that we all focused on giving out the 1 million traps, but the traps that you check once a year. So we continue to commit ourselves to 1 million checks. So we'd like to look at efficiencies that aren't that complex, efficiencies that we really need to engage with. I mean, of course, we're attempting to take all of the knowledge that we've gathered around how to catch a predator into something that is actually just a set and forget kind of system, and that's utterly critical to commercial success, obviously, or to people feeling good about what they're getting done and also what's happening in their backyard. And that can be simply, closing feedback loops, going, sending you a notification when the trap goes off. It's not that difficult for us to do. So all of those other aspects, I think, need to be considered to support communities and especially within cities, yeah.
A question over here.
We're up there.
Over here, Nicola.
Hello.
Tim Hooson from Predator-Free Hauraki Coromandel. Look, Kelvin, I've got a question for yourself. We've heard a lot here over the last couple of days about enabling the social interaction, the communities around us, and actually mobilising and getting that movement happening. And I just wondered whether you had kind of 3 insights or thoughts as to how you've done that and how you might do that differently. We're contemplating exactly this issue for ourselves.
Well, the first thing is keep it simple. So when we started, everyone said that we needed to be trapping possums and we needed to be trapping mustelids in our backyards, and that's not the case because we don't really have any. So we put a rat trap in people's backyards. It's very easy to use and it's not going to cause injury. We put it inside the box so cats, dogs and small children can't stand on it. So look, keep it simple. Look at what you've got in the landscape. A lot of those pests like possums and mustelids can be handled outside of backyards in the reserves and in your surrounding landscape. The last 2 days I've been putting out 120 chew cards across Crofton Downs because no one in this room believes us that we're predator free. So as a volunteer, that's the sort of thing we come under a lot of pressure to give feedback on. As a community, we don't really care. We know we don't really have any rats around. We don't have many mustelids or possums, so we're pretty happy. Okay. I don't have much longer to talk. We do a mailbox drop and then we get 1 in 5. That's simple. So Predator-Free Seatoon, they got their 1 in 5 traps out in 1 day. If the government gave us a free trap for every household in New Zealand at 1 in 5, it's around 280,000 households. It's around 4.5 million. Then we're going to be a long way down the track. So if there's anyone from the government in this room, I'd just like to let you know that I said that. Sorry, Meg.
So I think I'm going to wrap it up there because I don't want to get between attendees and lunch. But I wanted to thank our panel very much. I think it's important to wrap up the morning sessions on the kind of the thoughts about predator-free, the systems behind it, with actually the team who are at the cutting edge of Kiwi ingenuity and innovation for it, the dude at the heart of the community, and the brains behind some of our largest landscape scale operations, all together to explain to you that it is a complex mix of tools required, and your support is what we are really appreciative of. Thank you.